Hey everyone, it's February 11th, 2018, and this is your episode 133 of At Percussion. I'm your host, Casey Cangelosi, and with me as usual are Laurel Black.
Hi.
And Ben Charles.
Hi everybody.
Caleb Pickering is sitting in for Megan Arns. How's it going, Caleb?
Hey, good.
I don't know if you did this on purpose, but I think that's your podcast shirt, right?
It was not on purpose, but now I realize that it's just a happy accident.
I think that's the third not on purpose that we've had.
Yeah, it's a good shirt.
He does this to me a lot. He just stops the engagement. It's done. Yeah, good skill. You guys, our guest is an internationally recognized soloist, a composer, and one of the pioneers of six-mallet marimba playing. He's recorded 6 CDs and 1 instructional performance DVD titled Marimba in Concert. He's the inventor of the Aluphone instrument, and I got to know him over the course of about 10 days while he and I, along with Marta Kilmasara, were judging together the Italy Percussive Arts Society marimba competition. He is just a really, really nice guy, and today just happens to be his birthday. So hello and happy birthday to Kai Stensgaard. How are you?
Hello, thank you. I'm very fine.
25 years young.
Something like maybe a little more. Yeah.
Well, it's great to have you joining us from Denmark. I know we talk about the podcast a lot and what we've done and what we're trying to do and all of that, but it's, again, just like so cool. We can just have Kai here from Denmark.
It's a great pleasure for me to be here. I think it's fantastic what you guys are doing. I'm following them as much as possible. It's very interesting to hear about other people and colleagues and get new ideas. Very inspiring, I think. So thank you for that.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, you're very welcome. What do you have there, Ben?
So we talked about this a little bit before we were actually started recording, but it's a question I always like to ask someone like Kai. I remember talking to Anders Estrand about this too. Like, when you're in Denmark, way back in the day, how exactly did you get into marimba playing? Because that was rare at that time, even in countries where we had very wide access to marimba and mallet instrument sort of instruction. And then, sort of as a continuation of that question, you're one of the few people I've ever seen that lists studying with Lee Howard Stevens in his bio, because Lee, as we know, doesn't teach at a university. So could you tell us about your studies with Lee Howard Stevens?
Yeah. Well, the reason why I started playing the marimba is, I went to the music conservatory. And at that time, I didn't really know the marimba. To get in at that time, I only had to play a small piece on a vibraphone. Because there was not really a special thing you had to play on marimba. So I was actually going to the conservatory there just to learn more percussion. I was a drummer at that time. But, at the conservatory, I saw the marimba for the first time. And after 1 year of study, I just fell in love with the sound of the marimba. So it always asked me to come and play it. And I remember my teacher telling me, well, don't spend so much time on the marimba because you cannot use it for anything. Yeah, but I was just attracted to the instrument, and I had a feeling that this instrument would be very big one day. And and after studying I come back to the question, after my study there, I decided to study with Lee Howard Stevens. But before I did that, I actually went to California, to Cal State University, to study there for 9 months with Karen Irvin, because she was one of the first I had ever heard about. And the reason I found her was because of the PAS magazine. I have been a member of the PAS since that time. And I wrote her a letter that I would love to come and study with her. And it succeeded. And while I was studying there in California, there was a PASIC at Tucson, Arizona. So the whole percussion department drove over to Tucson, and there I saw Lee Howard Stevens for the first time. But actually, Karen Irvin, she didn't play the Stevens grip. She played the cross grip, but she started immediately teaching me the Stevens grip. She didn't know it that well, but she taught me how to hold the mallets and the basic thing of the technique. And after hearing Stevens at PASIC, I said, wow, that's amazing. Is that really possible on the marimba, what he did at that time? So I decided to go and study with him. And 1 year later, I was lucky to go to New York City, stay there for 3 months and have a lesson every week. And that was amazing for me at that time. So I guess I'm probably the first one in Denmark or Scandinavia doing the Stevens technique, bringing it to Denmark. So that's the story.
Were you doing it? Were you in school or working or doing anything else in New York other than just studying with Lee?
I was just studying, yeah. I was living at a place called International Student House, and that was a little difficult because it's difficult to find a place to live in New York City. Expensive, and bringing a marimba. I brought a Mossa marimba without resonators, so it doesn't take up too much space in my luggage. But I found this room in this International Student House, and they were able to place me a place where I could practice. So I was practicing technique every day. So that was the main thing we were doing for a long time, to really get a good understanding of the technique.
You know, we often get people asking, where do you think the marimba literature is going? You know, it seems like almost every couple of weeks we see some new groundbreaking thing that we thought couldn't have been done, or now all of a sudden 6 mallets is common, and if tomorrow someone was doing 8, we all would be like, oh yeah, well of course, you know, that's no big surprise that we see that's, you know, something new all the time. So I mean, it seems like someone like you, Kai, who's seen it go through these progressions, you can probably better answer the question, you know, where do you think the literature and everything is going?
Well, I think it's quite difficult to answer because I think it's going in a lot of different directions. And for myself, what I have done, I think I'm probably trying to get it in a more popular direction and not too contemporary. And the reason for that is that I kind of have to live from playing marimba in my area. And, you know, if you only want to give concert at music conservatives, you have a chance every second year or so. But I'm playing at small places and playing especially for people who are not educated in music. So they have to be able to understand what I'm doing. So I mix my program a lot with folklore, jazz music, and easy listening pieces, actually, and also a few more contemporary pieces. So I'm trying to pull in that direction, and also trying to mix the marimba with other instruments, because I think it's important that it's not only focused on solo marimba, because it's still a new instrument, and to be able to get out to a wider audience, it's important to blend it with other instruments. So I have been doing some arrangement and playing with people like violin, cello, accordion, and pan flute and flute, and to make it more accessible for people. But then again, of course, I know there's a lot of experiment going on with how far you can bring the marimba music, not only technical wise, but also as for compositions. But I don't get that much into that anymore, actually. I mainly play my own music now. So, yeah. So what direction it's going? Well, I think the 6 mallet thing is going to be big, because right now it's actually very big. Since I started, it's kind of exploded, I think. There's so many great 6 mallet players now. And they are also using different kind of techniques. So we are not using the same 6 mallet grip. And that also influenced the music we are playing, I guess, with the 6 mallet.
Sure.
Yeah. And technically wise, 4 mallet playing, I see this guy from Greece. Now his name is not in my brain.
Theo Milkov.
Yeah, Theo, yeah. And he's doing some amazing thing that no one was thinking about before, with the way he's doing his sticking. And So that's quite amazing to see that still new ideas are coming up. So the technique is still developing. And of course, also the music you are writing will develop alongside with the technique. So.
Yeah, cool. What'd you have there, Laurel?
Oh, I was just going to say, since we're on this 6 mallet thing, I was just looking at your website, Kai, and perhaps I'm showing my ignorance, but I didn't know that Vida premiered a 6 mallet solo in the 60s. Did you guys know that?
No? I bet Caleb knew it.
What piece was that?
It's, I just got to scroll up to it. The composer's name is Robert Chenoweth, and when I saw Chenoweth, that's when I was like, what? Kind of my ears or my eyes perked up. It's just called Etude for 6 Mallets, written by Robert Chenoweth, premiered by Vida in January 1964, and it was evidently printed up in Percussion News in May of 1998.
Yeah. Well, the first time I noticed the 6 mallet thing was the Keiko Abe piece with the saxophone. But that was not really a developing of the 6 mallet grip because it was a kind of a steady grip. There was no really interval change in that one at the time. So I didn't know there was one in the 60s. I began in 1984 actually doing this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, I remember seeing you. I'm trying to remember which PASIC it was, Kai. I think it was in Tennessee, maybe the last time I was in Tennessee, but you brought your saxophone player.
Oh, that was in Austin. I think it's around 10 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
10 years.
2006 or so, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But I remember that, and I remember watching you do 6 mallets, and then I decided I want to play the Prism Rhapsody piece, and I did it with a friend of mine. We did the duo version for a concerto competition, and because I saw it, I just thought it was very inspiring what you were doing.
Thank you. And also later I made with the marimba Nandayapa and Seferino Nandayapa. He also did some 6 mallet playing, and I don't know when he started, but that's probably many years ago also. But that was also a kind of a fixed grip with not really changing too much of the intervals. Mm-hmm. So
I can do a ton as long as it's C major and in triads. It's Caleb, you were going to say something, I think.
Yeah. So Casey, I know you probably still sell it. Character number 6, the 6 mallets.
Yeah, I wrote for AJ.
Yeah.
I think it's still. I don't know if I don't know if we still sell it or not.
Yeah, but let's say Joe Porter and Kai here and my teacher Dean Gronemeier. Seems like all the people writing 6 mallet solos are 6 mallet players. And I feel like it's character number 6 is a good example where if you don't know all the ins and outs of 6 mallets, it's really hard to get your head around all the possibilities, with no offense to Professor Cangelosi. Yeah.
Well, I met Dean Gronemeier in Mexico in in the year 2000. They had the first international percussion convention in Tuxtla Gutiérrez, Chiapas. And there I met with Dean Gronemeier. It was the first time I met him, and we were both playing 6 mallets. And we were talking, how do you hold the mallets? And it ended up that we were doing exactly the same thing. And then I asked him, how did you start it? Well, that's because you published this piece in 1984 or something. I wrote some piece, or I transposed some pieces by some folklore music I recorded in Guatemala. Because back in 1984, I went to Guatemala and southern Mexico on a trip right after I finished the music academy. And that was because I wanted to find out how could I use the marimba, because no one knew it. And in those countries, everyone knew the marimba. So I was backpacking for 3 months. And it was also there I got the idea for the 6 mallet thing, because in Guatemala at a fiesta, I saw a Mayan marimba sitting. He had a lot of rum. So he was kind of drunk, but he had 3 mallets in each hand. And I said, wow, that's interesting. He didn't really play because he was actually too too drunk. But that gave me an idea. That could be fun to do something with that. And some of the music I recorded there, I had actually published under the name Two Mayan Dances. And they doesn't demand for a lot of technical independence among the mallets. But I started playing them at concert back home, and I always did them as a kind of encore piece, and people was just amazed about these pieces. And for me, it was not very difficult pieces. And I said, wow, if people like it that much, maybe I should try to develop this a little. And I started doing some other pieces. But after meeting with Dean Gronemeier, I really started developing my own style of playing and started writing music for it. And nowadays, when I try to, let's say now I want to start composing a piece with 4 mallets, and I start playing around on the marimba, and then suddenly I think, well, I need some sound, and I pick up 2 more mallets because it feels so natural now to play with 6 mallets. So that's why I'm mainly playing and writing music for 6 mallets right now. So.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've seen you play. I've seen P. Chang play, and you guys might not know, but Jack Van Giem can really play 6 mallets well. Yeah, I've seen one of Caleb's other teachers, Tim Jones play, and man, everyone is very different. You'd think, okay, back to what Caleb said about my piece for 6 mallets, which, I mean, he's absolutely right. If you don't really play that, it's really hard to figure it out. I mean, it was a lot of trouble to write for sure, but it's amazing how different everyone is. I mean, you would really think, oh, there's got to be only so many ways you can do it, but like all 4 of those people just look totally different. It seems like they almost do it completely different.
To me,
and I think
in a sense it reminds me of like early 4-mallet playing. The first, as far as I'm concerned, the first sort of 4-mallet star was Gary Burton. And then just a few years later, Lee Howard Stevens came out, and both obviously just incredibly, technically capable players. But they were playing, obviously one's playing vibraphone and one's playing marimba, but other than that, they were playing different instruments, as I say. Like, the technique was so different that it opened up just such different possibilities.
Yeah. And also I think some of the pieces written by players with another 6-mallet technique can be very difficult for me to play, because the compositions are kind of made into the technique you are using.
Yeah. And
for example, the technique based on the cross grip, they have some problems playing some of my pieces because I have some wider intervals than they can do with the 6-mallet grip. Mm-hmm. So there's different ways of doing it.
I find it all incredibly hard. Again, C major, root position triads. Ben,
I mean,
you're gonna.
Oh, sorry, hon.
Oh no, sorry, Laura. Why don't you say something and then I'll cue Ben in.
Oh no, I was just going to confirm that there are certain keys that are basically impossible to play in, Kai.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
The best keys are C major, F major, and G major. I'm a minor and D minor, of course. If you go outside that, you're going into some problems. But I tried to make a more contemporary piece called Hexagram, where I'm trying to use the whole keyboard. But then again, it's not a tonal piece in that context. So that's why it's possible to make some other chord progressions. And when you play in those normal keys like F, C, and G, if you had to have a sharp like a D major in the middle mallet, you have a problem because it's too short suddenly. So that's why, So you really have to write the music so it fits into the technique. But in a way, it's the same thing for 4-mallet playing. The 4-mallet playing also influences a lot of how you compose the music.
It kind of makes me think of, Ben did a topic on the Deegan Company, and we went through a whole lot of different instruments and how the chimes were configured, how xylophones were configured. It seems like I wonder how the instrument would have grown up if 6 mallets was something that people were trying to do. I wonder if the marimba would be configured differently if six mallets just like was something we decided from the beginning we want to be able to do, you know?
Yeah.
Who knows? Ben, anyway, you're going to tell us a little about the history of six mallets, I think.
Yeah, well, it's not so much about the history, just as a sort of overview of it. But if you're interested in six mallet playing, Kai's website has quite a bit of information on it, as well as Pei-Ching Wu, who we've mentioned several times already, and we mentioned a couple weeks ago, wrote a dissertation on six mallet playing, and she does a nice little overview of sort of the six mallet all-star players, I'll call them, and she actually, in my opinion, left out one that I wanted to include today. But it's basically, I just wanted to give an overview of what different people have done with their grips. So Dean Gronemeier, who of course was one of Caleb's teachers at UNLV, used Stephen's grip, and he sort of superimposed Burton grip onto the thumb, so there's an extra mallet sitting sort of on the outside of the thumb. And as Kai mentioned, Kai uses basically the same grip. Pei-Ching Wu, who of course wrote this dissertation, uses Burton grip, and she puts an extra mallet below the original two, in other words, sitting closest to the palm of her hand, and it sits outside of the thumb, sort of similar to Dean and Kai's grip, but it's based on Burton grip in the hand. And she has all sorts of pictures in her book of how she can do different chords, like E flat major chord is obviously a chord that is not very six mallet friendly, but she actually kind of flips her hand completely sideways and is playing the G with like mallet 4 and the E flat with mallet 5 and the B flat with mallet 6. If you can picture that based on my description, look at the pictures, it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Keiko Abe plays a traditional grip with sort of an extra mallet added between the middle and the ring fingers. And she, just like Kai, has written a few pieces that uses this her six mallet technique, and it's more limited than it seems a lot of the six mallet experts. She has Itsuki Fantasy. There's a version of Wind Across Mallets for six mallets, which also exists for four mallets. Prism Rhapsody has a six mallet section, and she also has a piece called Galilee Impressions that I've never actually heard, but I own the music to. And those all use her six mallet technique. Ludwig Albert, who is a student of Miss Abe, also uses a similar approach, and from what I understand, I don't know if this story is actually true, there was one time where he had like a photo shoot, and he sort of spread out a bunch of mallets in his hands, and they took a picture of him, and it looked like he played 8 mallets, but he didn't actually. But then when people thought he did, he went ahead and figured out how to play with 8 mallets. I don't know if that story's true or not, but that's what I heard. But anyway, he's written a couple of pieces that use 8 mallets as well, which as far as I know is the most mallets anyone's played with in one hand. And he also has a couple of 6 mallet pieces he composed. One is called Let's Dance, which I haven't heard, but I don't think is based on the David Bowie song by the same name, but I could be wrong. There's a guy named Wesley Bula who plays Burton grip, and he kind of just shoves an extra mallet in between the existing two. Rebecca Kite, who of course we had on before, she holds her mallets sort of in Burton grip configuration, but instead of between the index finger and the middle finger, the outer mallet goes between the middle finger and the ring finger, sort of like Stephen's grip, and then she shoves an extra mallet in the middle that's held underneath the inner mallet, and she has pictures as well in this dissertation if you're curious to see that. Robert Patterson gave the world's first all-6 mallet recital at the Eastman School of Music in 1993, so every piece on the program was written for 6 mallets. His piece is also based on Burton grip with an extra mallet on the inside of the hand, and he has a website where he talks about it some. And one of the earlier players, I think from around 1980, was Linda Pimentel, who used multiple 6 mallet grips. She had one based on Musser, one based on Burton, and one based on traditional grip, and she kind of, it sounded like, switched depending on the pieces. And then the one that was not in the dissertation that I'd like to give a shout out to is Simon Boyar, who uses his grip. To me looks similar to Dean Gronemeier, but he has this, and there used to be a video, I couldn't find the video anymore. He has this method where he kind of tosses the inside mallet within the hand like up and down, and he can get like a D major chord or an E flat major chord. It's like really freaky because he literally he tosses his hand up and catches the mallet and puts it into a different position. And there's some videos of Simon playing on YouTube if you're interested in seeing his 6 mallet technique. And Kai, like I said, on his website has some information on six mallet playing, including a very extensive list of works for six mallets, or there's some for five mallets on there. And I was trying really hard to try and catch him and find one that wasn't on his list. But as far as I could tell, every single piece is on there. So, yeah, if you're interested in some six mallet repertoire, take a look at Kai's website.
There's also a great marimba player from Argentina called Marcos Cabezas. And I think he might be playing with his own six mallet grid, but I'm not quite sure of what he's doing. But you could check out his videos. And in Poland, there's a vibraphone player, and that's a very difficult name, this Polish name. So I don't remember it now, but he's a white player, and what he can do, the middle mallet just pull back and forward. It's in a small, the mallet is in a, well, he does some things so it just can slide in a small, what do you call that? He put the mallet into a hole of a steel ring or something. I'm missing the English word right now, sorry. But he's amazing also, but it's mainly for the vibraphone because he doesn't do very wide intervals. I'm sure you can find him on web page.
What do you got there, Caleb?
Yeah, I've seen Marco's as well. I can't remember his last name, the one you just mentioned, but yeah, I've only seen pictures, and a few short snippets of videos, but he can really get around it. One other who I've kind of been, he's just a few years older than me. He's probably late 20s, early 30s. But Joe Porter.
Yeah.
Man, he's doing some really cool stuff with six mallets.
Yeah, I came across his YouTube channel, and he actually, it looks like, has like a method he's published on it.
Yeah, I think his thesis or his dissertation is on his own grip, but really cool stuff from him.
Joe Porter. I certainly feel like I know that name. Well, yeah, thanks a lot, Ben. That's really, really great. I was going to add one to the list as well. It sounds like we all kind of know someone else, but someone named Jane Boxall. She had, we shared a clinic, I don't know, somewhere or other, but she had this cool recital going where she had a marimba program going from a 2-mallet piece, a 3-mallet piece, 4-mallet piece. I think she had a 5-mallet piece and then a 6. And I don't remember if she went to 8. I thought at least the plan was to go to 8.
I think she did.
I thought she did. Yeah,
I
thought
she
went
played
all the
Ludwig
way.
Albert piece.
Yeah, right. That's right. It was a Ludwig Albert piece, and I think her plan was to get a piece for 1 mallet too, so she'd have a complete 1 to 8. I don't know. Cool idea. Yeah, I don't know. I just like it, and it kind of showed right there. You know, like, is more mallets always more music? You know, like, because we keep saying, like, oh, you can do more here and more here and more here. But then again, someone like Gene Kaczynski writes his 2 book, and everyone just loves it. It seems like there's a lot of music in that 2 book. Yeah. So it's just interesting. It's fun.
I think a lot of what it comes down to is, like, when we talk about 6 mallets, we often get into the limitations of what 6 mallets can do. Or when you talk about 2 mallets, you often get into the limitations of what 2 mallets can do. And I think if you look at a lot of writing on creativity, limits are actually a good thing. They can sort of force you into a creative channel. And I'm starting to sound a lot like Laurel here, but I notice a lot of the time, like when I teach like beginning drum set students improvisation and trying to do a fill, and just do a fill that starts on beat 1 and ends on beat 4, then play a hit on beat 1 after that. It's like there's so many possibilities. They have all these drums and cymbals they can play, and then they do, and it sounds terrible. And it's like, why don't you just do triplets on the snare drum, and they can squarely land it on beat 4, and then they can kind of move their triplets around a little bit in a logical way. But it's like when you sit down at a piano and you have 88 keys at your disposal. A good pianist doesn't use all 88 keys at once by any means.
Yeah. Well, it's come up on the podcast several times talking about composition. And if you narrow down the parameters, it seems like it's easier to write. Someone asks you for a specific piece for squeaky toy and hacky sack. It's like, oh, that's much easier to do than, just write me anything. That's harder.
Casey, I got a commission coming for you.
Squeaky toy and hacky sack. I'm into that. I would love that.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, just listening to our conversation, talking about grips and where mallets go and everything. I don't know if you guys remember when we got trolled a long time ago by someone who was like, you don't talk about percussion enough. You talk about like art and life and culture and stuff.
I remember that.
Yeah, I would invite them to listen to this one because it's much more like
it's
shoppy.
Much more technical. This is probably the most technical we've gotten.
Yeah.
That guy was nice, I have to say. He was polite. Yeah, I wouldn't call him a troll, but I know I do remember what.
No, if we can go back to video format, I'll hold all those grips up to the camera so.
Oh man, video, the old days. That was when editing was tough. Yeah. Hey, well, speaking of something visual, Laurel and I are going to tag team a little What's the Sound, and I think we better do it now while the newborn is quiet right now. well, hopefully we have a rare window of, hopefully a little 10-minute window of calm.
Yeah.
But, so listen, this is the What's the Sound for the week, and I've got a visual hint for you. So those of you listening and driving, just don't worry about it. This is unprecedented. It's never happened before. A What's the Sound with no sound. So here's your picture.
Woo.
And Kai, I don't know if you can see that, but there's a little chat window in the Skype. If you can find a little button, there should be a little conversation that we've been having and a little graphic, but that is one of your hints. And let's go ahead and let's give you another hint as well. So this does have something to do with sound. There's another one. So yeah, this is going to be one of those things that either you know it or you don't. And you might have bumped into this. I found it on Facebook. Somebody posted it. It was pretty interesting. But what these are synesthesia paintings by Melissa McCracken. So there's a nice little article on, Vice.com. Says this artist with synesthesia sees colors in music and paints your favorite songs. So the two I just posted for you, the first one is David Bowie's Life on Mars. And the second one is Prince's Joy in Repetition. So she has a bunch of other ones. Radiohead. What else do we have here? Iron and Wine. We've got Bach Cello Suite No. 1. Another Radiohead. Pink Floyd. So yeah, she's painting from the synesthesia she sees while she's doing these songs. And I tried to figure out a little bit if there was any rhyme or reason to it. And I did find there's a lot of correlation with colors and the keys that the pieces are in. So she tends to think of things around F and C as yellow, and accidentals like Pink Floyd's in F sharp, they'll be darker. They'll be purples and greens. So it doesn't hold true for all of her pieces. It's not that consistent, but she talks about there are other things she pays attention to. Like she's not always paying attention to the specific pitches. She's sometimes paying attention to other things. And on this Vice.com interview, she is asked, for just a sample question here, do you only paint songs or do you paint do you only paint songs or do you paint other sounds too? Sound isn't as jarring as music. There's usually one quick burst of color and then it disappears. But for my mom's birthday, I painted the sound of her footsteps. I remember hearing her clicking heels when she came home, and it was such a comforting purple sound to me as a child. And she also goes on to say in other parts, like, is it always the pitch or is it something else? And she says, well, it depends on what I'm paying attention to. Like, she can kind of choose to focus on the bass line, or she can choose to focus on the rhythm. I thought it was really interesting. Okay, if you can paint footsteps, then wow, there's just so much there you can do. And I really like this because something we're so often challenged with is how to explain music to non-musicians, and a lot of times to musicians. You know, Laurel and I taught the music appreciation course, and I talk about it all the time, and we enjoyed that class a lot, but we really thought about it as like, hey, this is kind of the trenches, and we're trying to fight for music and for music education and to keep funding. And it's so important to explain music properly to people and let them know that it's important. And so it stays in public school. And a lot of times our most important audience are the non-musicians. So it's just great to see another tool that we can possibly grab to help explain. And I know I use visual aids a whole lot when I was explaining music to them. And yeah, this is great. It's just another one. What do you want to add to that, Laurel?
Yeah, I would add that the type of synesthesia that we're talking about is the one that's probably most commonly discussed and probably to us, the one we're most familiar with. And it's called chromesthesia, which is where the connection of color or vision with sound. And there are other types, and I can get to those, but I was really interested in looking at the sort of the scientific side of this. And do we know what synesthesia is in terms of what processes are at work? And I found that for scientists, it seems to be a rather intriguing problem. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I can't see anybody, so let me know when I cut out. Studies have confirmed that the phenomenon is biological, automatic, and apparently unlearned. The condition does run in families and is much more common in women than men at about a 2-to-1 ratio. And there's no connection between it and any type of mental illness. But researchers at the University of Amsterdam predict that brain regions related to 3 different cognitive processes are part of synesthesia. And those are the sensory processes, the attentional or binding processes, and then lastly, the cognitive control processes. But there's another lab that thinks perhaps you just get bundles of nuclei of nerve cells and they cross. And that's what gives us multisensory feedback. So there's chromesthesia, which is color and sound. There's grapheme color synesthesia, which is where your brain detects color as a way to organize and remember things. There's, this one is interesting, the lexical gustatory synesthesia, which is the sensation of taste when you think of different phonemes, which is basically like syllables of the English language. So if you think of la or ka, then you actually experience a taste. And then there's ordinal linguistic personification, where you personify numbers and letters as if they're people. There's number form synesthesia, where you follow mathematical sequences to the infinite. And then time-space, where you imagine time and space around you as a means to a calendar, like physically there, not just looking at the diagram that we use two-dimensionally as a calendar, but imagining it in a 3D way. So I must admit, the only one I knew about was the color with sound one, chromesthesia. And I think that probably is the most common one.
Yeah, I didn't know about numbers for sure. I knew about just other senses, but numbers seems beyond sense to me.
I know, yeah. So that's very interesting to me. And I could have read more about that, but I was really focused on the one about color and sound. But I did find that about 1 in 2,000 people are synesthetes, but some experts think that maybe as many as 1 in 300 have some variation of synesthesia. And I'm admittedly curious that perhaps a lot of us who end up with creative lives have some form of synesthesia. And I don't know about you guys, but like certain keys to me have always had a color in my mind, or certain patterns of pitches. Like, for example, the beginning of time from marimba is a really dusty, dark orange to me for some reason. And D flat 4 in the middle of a piano is a Kelly green color every time I hear it.
What was the calendar one called?
Time space.
That's because when you said that, I was just like, that's what I do. I just assumed everyone thought about it like that, but maybe I'm looking too deep. But
describe that one more time, Laurel. The time space one.
It's where you imagine time and space around you as a means to a calendar in a 3-dimensional way. So will you describe, Caleb, like what you do or how you think?
Like an arc, like the calendar arcs around you. You have it placed out.
Oh.
I don't understand.
It's very high level stuff.
It sounds like it. Wait a minute. So you have an appointment today. So right now it's 1:45. You have an appointment at 2, and that somehow manifests visually?
For me, at least, like I have my calendar and I have the day, and it's just, I don't know. I guess I've never really thought about other people not doing it that much, but I'd have to read more about it.
Yeah, no, I certainly would too. I mean, to me, it's very clear. Okay, it's this time. I have something to do at that time, but there's no visual cue or anything. It's just
like in other words, you kind of like you see like your iPhone calendar. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like an iPhone calendar, and you got like one of these popped up.
Oh, okay.
That might just be a visual people thing.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else, Laurel?
I will just add that Olivier Messiaen was a synesthete.
Oh, of course.
I read that. Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I wonder if it's connected to frisson. If you remember, I talked about that in one of our very first episodes.
Yeah.
Where you get the chills listening to music, which is a physiological response to a sense. Yeah, I wonder if like kind of the same regions talking to each other is at work there as with synesthesia.
Yeah, cool.
I had a follow-up to this. Have you guys ever heard of a piece called Prometheus, the Poem of Fire?
Nope.
It is a 1910 symphonic work by Alexander Scriabin, and it is for piano, orchestra, optional choir, and color organ. And if you look it up on Wikipedia, you can read more about color organs. But basically, it's a keyboard instrument that when you play different notes on it, it projects different colors. And I'll just read the little Wikipedia blurb on color organ from Prometheus, just for time's sake. It says, the part for color organ is notated on a staff of its own in treble clef at the top of the score and consists of 2 parts. One changes with the harmony and always goes to the root note of the prevailing harmony and thus produces the color Scriabin associated with each key. The other consists of much longer notes sustained through many bars and does not appear to be related to the harmony or therefore to the first part, but for the most part slowly rises up the scale a whole tone at a time, the changes being several pages of score apart or a minute or 2 apart. It is not clear what relationship this part has to the first part or to the music as a whole. The score does not explain how 2 different colors are to be presented at the same time during a performance. The color organ part also contains 3 parts briefly at one point in the score. Sources differ on what Scriabin's intentions were for the realization of the color organ part. Many state that the colors were meant to be shown on a screen in front of the audience, but others say that the colors were intended to flood the entire concert hall and that showing them on a screen was merely the compromise adopted after flooding the concert hall was found impossible or impractical. The score itself contains no indications about how this is meant to be handled. So it sounds like some real like acid trippy type stuff.
So it must switch lenses or something? Like different colored lenses go over a light? So
the color organ itself, it sounds like different people have invented their own versions. And that piece was from 1910, so I think it would have been a lot more difficult back then. Yeah. Now I would think it would be actually very easy to get. Not even surprising or maybe even unusual now. Yeah, very cool. Well, yeah, thanks for helping out there, Laurel. I'd love to get to our Facebook questions since we're kind of coming towards the end. First Facebook question from Johnny Davidson: is improvisation a skill that is focused on in your practice and in your teaching? Spanish Dance has an improv section that I think is refreshing. It makes us seem like not just cover artists, but that we're able to add something original to the work.
Well, improvisation is something I started on very late, actually. But from starting improvisation, that was also what started me writing music. Because when I'm practicing some improvisation, suddenly I have some ideas that often becomes the beginning of a new piece. So actually, I'm not teaching very much anymore. But when I was teaching, I didn't really use improvisation because that's kind of 20 years ago I was teaching. But now, if I have a few private students, I do teach improvisation because many of my pieces I've written now has a small part that can be improvised. But normally, I also write that you don't need to improvise. You can just play what's written in the music. But I think it's nice to be able to open up a piece, especially in the style that many of my pieces are in.
So thanks, Johnny Davidson, for the question. We also have one from our very own Megan Arns. She says, happy birthday, Kai. Can you speak to the Latin influences in your music? What draws you to the style, and how do you fuse it with your European musical background?
The Latin music?
Yeah, the influence.
Yeah, there's a lot of Latin inspiration in what I'm doing. I've always been very much in love with Latin music. And when I started playing marimba, I also started playing the steel pan. So I had a steel pan group where we played Latin music. And when I started playing at first, I had a rock group playing kind of Latin rock and roll in the style of Santana and that type of music, where I was playing marimba and vibraphone. But that was when I was 25 years old. So along with the classical education, I always had this Latin thing going as a hobby. And later then, when I really got into playing with the musicians from Mexico, I also got even more inspired by the Latin music and of course music from Mexico, which some of my pieces also have. The Salsa Mexicana is a kind of a, well, it was written when I was going to Mexico. I think it could be fun to bring a piece inspired by Mexico. So that's why I wrote this piece. And I wrote a concerto for marimba and symphony orchestra called Concerto Mexicano. So Latin music has always been a thing I like a lot.
So I've come across two things of yours that I wanted to ask about that we haven't spoken about yet. And it seems to be two sort of projects you have going. One is your duo with, I hope I'm saying it right, ZZ Wang. And the other thing I've come across is your body percussion group, where you dress in red, yellow, and blue. And you guys haven't seen this. It's if you're not familiar with the term patching is like playing on your body. And they do a lot of very cool stuff with that. And it seems like maybe sort of marketed toward children's concerts.
Yeah, in Denmark we have a project with children concerts that's very organized for many years. And in the beginning I did a lot of marimba concerts for those school concerts, but later I developed into more projects, and one of them is playing stomp music. And the trio I'm having for playing stomp music, after some years, well, we had a lot of stuff to carry, and let's do some body percussion. There's no stuff to carry around. So we made this trio and are still doing a lot of that. It's a lot of fun to use your body as a percussion instrument.
Kai, we always ask our guests what's coming up for them, maybe what we can look for on the horizon. Is there anything that you have coming up or that we can look out for, or anything you'd like to plug?
Well, lately I have been taking some classes in arranging for jazz big band. So one of my pieces I actually arranged for jazz big band, but without the marimba as a part of it. But my plan is now to make this arrangement into a concerto for marimba and jazz big band. So that might be a coming project. And also I have a great cooperation with Renato Martins from Brazil. He's an Udu drum and cajon player. And we have had a project like 3 years now. I actually met him in Taiwan at the Percussion Festival. And we are still having more and more projects together and concerts together. So it's very interesting to play with a percussion player of this quality, because he's amazing what he can do with the Udu drum and cajon. So that's for sure something I'll be doing more. And another exciting thing is I'm not using the marimba so much there, but mainly percussion instrument. But it's together with my wife and an artist painter. We do see paint on a screen, and we do a video broadcast, or what you call projection on a big screen. And then the painting and the music is created at the same time and influence each other at the same time. Cool. That's very interesting to do. This project we call expandingcanvas.dk. That's a website if you want to look at it. So that's something we for sure are going to do more and more.
So I completely meant to ask this much earlier in the episode because I think we could talk about this a lot. But the Aluphone, can you just tell us about it? I've heard you play it several times. I'm sure everyone, at least here, my co-hosts, have heard you play it before.
The reason why I came up with the Aluphone was I was doing some stomp music actually in Stockholm, Sweden, at a building construction convention or something like that. I was hired to do this stomp show every 5 minutes each hour. And in the meantime, we was just walking around and seeing what was there. And we found a guy actually living right close to where I'm living. He has an aluminium foundry. And what he did, he made some special caps for fencing. And when we were talking and we were about to go to the next stomp show, he took one of those caps and hit it. And the sound that came from this cap was just amazing. It was a new sound for me, because as a stomp player, you hit anything just to hear how does it sound. And then suddenly there was this new sound that I felt was somewhere in between a vibraphone and a bell. And when we got back to Denmark again, I contacted this guy called Michael Hansen and asked him if we should try to see if we could tune these caps. And we agreed to do that. And after finding out it was not so difficult to tune them, we actually founded this company called Aluphone, and that gave the name for the instrument as well, of course. And so the reason why we did it is because it was an amazing new sound, I think, and I can really see it being used in a lot of different ways in percussion ensembles and of course as a solo instrument. And we have been a company for almost 10 years now, and it's amazing to see how composers are beginning to get more and more interested in it. So we have some hot names like James Macmillan. His second percussion concerto is totally based on the Aluphone. And it's, what's his name, Colin Curry, who premiered this piece. And Anders Koppel did a concerto for Aluphone and marimba, one play. And Evelyn Glennie premiered with the symphony orchestra here in the city where I live. And what we have on the Aluphone webpage, you can actually see a list of new pieces written. Also, Askell Masson, the guy who is famous for the snare drum piece, he wrote a new solo for Aluphone.
Oh, great. I didn't know that.
There's a lot of things going on for composer side. And more and more people are getting interested in it and purchasing an Aluphone, of course. And in the drum corps field, we in the beginning was connected with Santa Clara Vanguard, and they did some amazing thing with the Aluphone. And now what's the name? Blue Devils is using it a lot. So so it's good to connect together with the marimba. What I often do is I place it on the front side of the marimba, so I can play the marimba and Aluphone at the same time. So from the Aluphone, you get these legato notes and all the staccato notes from the marimba. And these two sound really fits very well. But I'm still waiting a lot to see more action in the percussion quartet or something, percussion ensemble context. But several times I've heard it being used as a substitute for other instruments. Mm-hmm. So we came a long way, but still it's difficult to get a business like this growing, because in the beginning we spent a lot of money just to make it happen.
Sure. Yeah. You mentioned Evelyn Glennie, and I remember when she played at one of the Olympic opening ceremonies, and there was your Aluphone out there. It looked just gorgeous. It was so cool to see. I mean, of course, a percussion soloist on something as big as the opening of the Olympics, but then to see your instrument there is really cool.
And that was amazing, because that was kind of 1 year after we started, and suddenly it was the Olympic Games. So,
it's a good start, yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's actually more popular in the East, in the Asian country. And I think it's something to do with it's a bell, because bell music played on bells in these countries are more common than in the western part of the world.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah. What do you got there, Caleb?
So I can't remember what university did this, but if you've seen Thad Anderson's his Tumblr post about his old spun steel brake drums, like ones, they're from 1920 Ford Model A's. So it's actually the brake drum Cage and Harrison would have been using.
Ah.
But I've seen people substitute Aluphone for those because they're way smaller than our normal. The brake drums now, they're just clonk.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's an instrument that's very easy to bow, and the sound gets up like 1 octave and sounds almost like a glass instrument.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah.
It's nice how easily you stack them on marimba, because we see people trying to stack vibraphones, and it's, you know, it's very, very tough, but the Aluphone just fits comfortably over the accidentals, and it's just very easy to reach. And yeah, seeing how you do it was just very, eye-opening and very cool.
The main instrument is what we call the Aluphone Concerto. It's a 2.5 octave instrument. But a year ago, we made a piccolo that goes up 1 octave. But, you know, of course, you need hard mallets to play that. But it's a kind of, it could be a substitute for the crotales. And some people actually told me it's maybe that's closest to the original crotale, because it has the same shape as the antique cymbals that was the beginning of this. And it seems like the modern crotale has developed a lot during the last year, so it's kind of getting away from the original sound.
Yeah. I was one other little detail I want to add to, or share with everyone, was seeing you carry them in Italy, carrying the bells. You had a stack like, you know, a foot thick, and you were just carrying it, so almost no weight. It's
very light, yeah. This 2.5 octave instrument is 18 kilos, and that's probably 36 pounds or something around that. But I can take it up and put it in my baggage and put it on an airplane. So it's like 2 kilos from the limit of most airplanes.
Yeah, it's deceptively light is what I'd like to share. I mean, it looks heavy. It looks like these, you know, and it sounds like it would be heavy because it really resonates loud and sings, and there's really clear pitch. You think, okay, it's heavy, heavy metal. But no, I was blown away to find out Kai carries the whole thing on the plane with him.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's really nice. I actually went with one of them to Iceland a few months ago because Askell Mason was premiering a concerto for Darabuka and symphony orchestra. And in the orchestra section, he was using the Aluphone. So they wanted to rent an Aluphone. But I ended up going up there with the Aluphone so I could have a small vacation in Iceland. That was cool.
Yeah, good deal. Yeah. Well, you guys, thank you so much for joining us on 133. Ben, Laurel, and Caleb, really appreciate it. And man, Kai Stensgaard, great to see you again. And thanks so much for being on the show.
Oh, it has been a great pleasure talking to you. So thank you so much for bringing me here.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you, Kai.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Okay, everybody, we will catch you later.
I hope so. Yeah.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.